I've always loved camping. Not the glamping kind or the family campground with electric hookups kind. I mean actual backwoods camping, pitch a tent, build your own fire, no cell service for miles. You in the dark with just enough stupid bravado to ignore how creepy that can get once the sun goes down. So when my friend Caleb mentioned his uncle had property out in West Virginia, a real secluded land near an old quarry, I was in before he finished the sentence. It was fall. The cold had started to seep into our breaths by sundown, but the colors were still clinging to the trees. We packed light. Sleeping bags, camp stove, a flask of whiskey, the usual. Drove out in Caleb's truck until we ran out of pavement and kept going. The place was gorgeous. Hilly, quiet, full of rustling leaves and not much else. The quarry was bone dry, just a huge sunken crater with cracked stone shelves and sparse brush. Almost like nature forgot about it mid-formation. Caleb said it had been that way for years, dried up long before his uncle bought the surrounding land. We set up camp on a flat ridge overlooking part of it. No one around for miles, or so we thought. That first night was calm. Fire crackling, stars clearer than I'd seen in months, coyotes howling somewhere way off in the distance. At one point, I stepped away to pee and noticed a faint light down below in the quarry. It wasn't flickering like a fire, it just glowed, pale yellow, dim. Not enough to see clearly by, but enough to catch your eye. I called Caleb over. He squinted down and shrugged it off. Probably someone with a lantern, he guessed, or an ATV with a headlamp. But the thing was, it didn't move, didn't get closer. Just sat down there at the base of the quarry like it was waiting for something. Eventually, we ignored it. Figured maybe some hunter had left something out, or it was a weird reflection. The woods play tricks on your eyes when you want answers badly enough. Next morning, after breakfast, we hiked down into the quarry, just out of curiosity. The light was gone, but the ground was brittle and bone dry. Looked like the place hadn't seen real water in a decade. We followed a narrow trail that broke off from the edge of the property. Not a formal path, more like something created by repeated use. Caleb hadn't noticed it before, but his uncle apparently rarely explored this side. About half a mile in, we saw it, a cabin. And I'm being generous calling it that. It was barely standing. The roof was patchy, one of the windows had been boarded with metal siding, and the whole thing looked like it had been coughed up from the 1950s and left to rot. No tire tracks, no mailbox, no sign of anyone living there now. But it had been used recently. There were boot prints in the dirt, canned food stacked inside, dustless spaces where items had clearly been moved or taken. An old wood stove with warm ash still inside. Tools, knives, coils of rope, flashlights, but not the modern ones. Big blocky ones with worn-out handles and corroded batteries. And then we saw the back wall. Polaroids, dozens of them, maybe over 100. Every single one taped or tacked to the wood. All of people sleeping, some in tents, some in hammocks, some in vans. All at night, all unconscious. My throat went dry. It was a fear that didn't rise all at once. It slid up my spine like cold oil, because the third row from the bottom, second from the left, was us. Me in my blue sleeping bag, mouth slightly open. Caleb turned to the side, our orange tent glowing faintly from the dying fire outside, taken from no more than a foot away from the entrance flap. Neither of us said a word. We just stared. I backed away from the wall, nearly tripped over an empty gas canister. Caleb moved toward the door. His hand was shaking. We didn't argue, didn't investigate further, just grabbed what little we had and ran. Full sprint through brittle brush and down branches. I don't even remember if we packed our tent or left it there. All I know is we got in the truck and peeled off that land like the devil was chasing us. Back in cell service range, we called Caleb's uncle, told him what we found. He swore up and down he'd never seen that cabin, that the property had been surveyed, fenced, cleared, that maybe it sat right on the boundary line and got missed. He called the county sheriff. Last I heard, someone went out to check. The place was empty. The photos were gone. No sign of recent habitation. Just a collapsing structure, old dust, and one burnt Polaroid fragment in the stove ash. a corner of what looked like a blue sleeping bag. We haven't gone camping since. I still think about that night sometimes, about how close someone stood to our tent, about how many times they watched other people in other camps waiting, about what they were planning next. But most of all, I think about that light, too dim to be modern, too steady to be fire, too much like bait. You know how sometimes you get that gut feeling something's off, but you ignore it because everything looks fine? That's how this started. I was between jobs last summer, scraping by on odd gigs, dog walking, overnight shifts, the occasional babysitting post on Craigslist. I'd had mostly normal experiences, and at the time, I still believed you could tell when something was wrong. I answered an ad that said, "Rural family needs sitter for 2 children, quiet home, cash payment." The parents seemed polite over the phone, sounded like they were in their late 30s. The mom, Kayla, gave me directions to their place, saying it was a bit out of the way, a little hollow outside Crossville. Now, I'm from Tennessee. Hollows and back roads don't scare me. I grew up with winding gravel drives and dogs that bark at everything but the wind. I figured if anything, I'd get some peace, play games with a couple of kids, and pocket $80 in cash. Easy. The drive was long, longer than I expected. Once I left the main road, it was all narrow lanes, trees crowding from both sides like the forest was swallowing the asphalt. I finally pulled up to this house at the bottom of a steep slope. It looked worn, not trashed, but like time had settled into the porch wood and paint. The kind of place where no one really notices if something's off. Kayla and the dad, whose name I think was Dean, came out to meet me. Smiling, friendly, made me feel like I was already part of the family. They introduced the kids. A girl, maybe 6, and a boy a little older. Both quiet, polite. A little too polite, honestly, but I didn't think much of it. Kayla said they'd be gone for a few hours. Some evening errand. She said I wouldn't need to do anything but keep the kids inside. Make sure they brush their teeth and stay off the back porch. I figured maybe they had an old dog or something back there. So I nodded. The kids barely talked. They sat on the couch and watched an old DVD of Matilda. I tried chatting, asked what grades they were in, what they liked to do. But they just gave me these half smiles like they were trying to be good. Like they were rehearsing what well-behaved kids are supposed to do. It was about an hour in when I went to the kitchen to grab a soda and noticed the family portraits on the wall. There were maybe 5 or 6 of them. One in the hallway, a few more in the living room. But in every photo, the kids were different, completely different. Different hair, different ages, different faces. One was a curly-haired toddler in overalls. Another was a pair of teens, a boy and girl, smiling awkwardly in church clothes. But none of them were these kids. The ones sitting behind me on the couch. I figured maybe they were cousins, or old photos. I told myself families change, adopt, who knows. Still, it felt weird. I tried calling Kayla, straight to voicemail. Tried Dean, same thing. I walked outside to get signal. Maybe I'd misheard something or needed to try again. And that's when I saw it. My car, parked where I left it, was now blocked in. There was a pickup behind it, mud spattered. No plates I could see. I hadn't heard it arrive. I hadn't seen it through the windows. It was just there. The kids were suddenly standing on the porch behind me. I hadn't heard them come out either. The boy looked up at me and asked if I was going to leave too. I said, "What do you mean?" He kind of glanced at his sister, then back at me and said something like, "The last sitter left her car too, but she didn't come back for it." That cold oil feeling slid down my back. I walked around the house, knocked on the bedroom doors. No one. No sign of the parents coming back. I thought maybe someone else was in the pickup, but the cab was empty. I went back inside, locked the front door. I didn't want to scare the kids, but something was wrong. I sat in the kitchen and kept one eye on the window, trying to text a friend, but I still had no signal. Eventually, I decided to wait until morning. I kept the kids with me in the living room, let them fall asleep on the couch, TV playing low. I didn't sleep much. At sunrise, I walked out to the car. The pickup was gone. Just gone. I drove straight into town and reported everything I could to the police. The house, the names, the kids, the truck. Here's where it gets worse. They told me that property had been foreclosed 6 months ago. No one was supposed to be living there. The power was running off an illegal hookup. There were no records of anyone named Kayla or Dean owning or renting it. When I asked about the kids, the officer kind of paused, said they'd found no children when they checked the place. No clothes, no toys, no sign of recent habitation. They didn't find the photos either. I still don't know who those kids were, or what happened to the last sitter. But every now and then, when I'm driving through a wooded hollow and pass a rundown house with a porch, I wonder if they're in there, waiting for the next ad to go up. Smiling, polite, well-behaved, just playing their part. If you're drawn to tales like these, consider subscribing to Spectral for more chilling entries waiting to be uncovered. And if you have your own haunting story that you'd like featured in an upcoming compilation, we'd love to hear it. Just email us at spectralentries@gmail.com. Now, let's get back to the video. I don't really believe in ghost stories. Not the way people usually tell them, anyway. I think our brains are wired to misread things: shadows, sound, déjà vu. The mind fills in what it wants to be there, especially when you're in a place where the world feels a little thinner. But then, I saw something I still can't explain. And believe me, I've tried. It happened last spring. My boyfriend, Marcus, and I were hiking a stretch of the Cumberland Plateau, somewhere southeast of Hazard, Kentucky. It wasn't an intense trip, just a weekend away from city noise. We'd picked a lesser-known trail recommended by a friend, one that we figured would be peaceful and a little remote. I'd grown up in eastern Tennessee and was used to the kind of fog that settles low in the hollows and the way trees swallow sound out there. We were maybe 3 hours into the loop when the weather turned. I'm talking instant downpour, no warning. 1 minute we were talking about lunch, and the next the sky cracked open like someone had flipped a switch. Cold, heavy sheets of rain and a wind that whipped through the trees like it had somewhere to be. We didn't have time to set up the tarp. Our gear was already damp, and the trail had turned into a muddy river. We were cursing and laughing, doing that kind of frantic shuffle hustle to find cover, when Marcus pointed off to the left and said, "There! What is that?" Through the trees, maybe 30 yards off trail, was a small building. It looked odd, like a miniature church, maybe. A one-room chapel with a pitched roof and stained glass windows. No signage or cross, just this strange, perfect little thing tucked in the woods like it had been placed there. The white paint wasn't chipped, and the glass windows weren't dusty or broken. The weirdest part? Every single window was glowing orange from the inside, like it was full of candlelight. We assumed, maybe stupidly, it was a park structure or an old family chapel from way back that some local kept up. The door wasn't locked, and when we stepped inside, it was warm. Actually warm, like someone had been there not long before us. There were maybe a dozen wooden pews, tiny pulpit, no religious symbols, no Bibles or hymnals, just candles. Lots of them, real ones, not electric. Tall ones melted onto window ledges, tea lights and glass holders along the aisle, even some tucked into the back corners. Every one of them was lit, flickering gently, and not a single other soul around. Marcus made a joke that it looked like we walked onto the set of a ghost movie. I laughed and told him to shut up before he jinxed us. We waited out the rain there for maybe 45 minutes, ate a protein bar, took a few photos. Marcus tried to take a video, but the candlelight didn't show up well on his phone. It made the room look dark and hollow, not at all like it felt in person. I remember looking down at one point and realizing there wasn't a speck of dirt on the wood floor. No cobwebs or moldy smell, just warm wax and cedar. When the storm eased, we left, hiking the rest of the loop in wet socks and that weird post-storm quiet that always makes you feel like the world is holding its breath. We didn't talk much about the chapel after that. It was just a strange, beautiful place. One of those happy accidents you find in the woods. A week later, I posted a photo on Instagram. just the outside of the building, backlit through the rain. I geotagged the location because a few people were asking where it was. And that's when it got weird. A guy I didn't know messaged me. His account looked normal, local photographer, lots of foggy forest shots. His message was short, just, "That chapel only shows up when it rains, but not to everyone." I stared at the screen for a while. I thought it was a joke or some folklore thing, so I replied and asked what he meant. He said his grandfather used to talk about it, that it was a place between, whatever that meant, that hikers who were lost or in danger sometimes found it, but it was selective. Most people passed by the woods without ever seeing it. He said he'd only seen it once, and when he went back after the storm passed, it was gone. I didn't believe him. I mean, I wanted to, but that's the kind of story you tell around a campfire. Except, it kept itching at me. So the next time it rained, maybe 2 weeks later, I checked the GPS pin for my post and Marcus and I drove back. It was storming hard just like before. We parked at the same spot, followed the trail, veered off the path where we remembered going before. And there was nothing, just trees, fallen branches, moss and silence. No building, no clearing, no signs of anything ever being there. We went back twice, once during a drizzle and once in full thunderstorm. Still nothing. I started second-guessing myself, wondering if we'd wandered off further than I remembered. But when I checked my photo again, the timestamp and coordinates were exactly where we had gone. I even tried comparing it with old topography maps and county records. That building isn't on anything. Sometimes I'll go back and stare at the photo. You can see the edge of the forest, the soft orange glow from the inside, the way the rain blurred the lines just enough to make it feel like a painting. The man on Instagram never replied to my last message. I don't know what we walked into that day. I don't know why we saw it. But every time it rains now, I find myself looking toward the tree line, half waiting to see that soft flicker of candlelight again, and half praying I never do.